Hello, welcome, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Jenny. I am the host of the Essence of Tea podcast, and I'm so glad that you are interested in learning more about tea and joining us as we intermingle our lives in the world and the community of tea. So, if you're watching live right now, please say hello in the chat. Let me know where you're watching from. I am actually streaming from Fairbanks, Alaska, and today we have a special guest, and I'll let her introduce herself, but she is not in Alaska. Now, right now, it's springtime, and it has actually already snowed 6 inches today. Yes, that's kind of crazy, so it's nice to warm up with a cup of tea. Let me know in the chat where you're watching from, and if you're drinking some tea today, what kind of tea you're drinking, and I'll introduce to you my special guest. Hello, Nicole.
Hello.
Hi, Nicole. Would you like to introduce yourself and share with us what kind of tea you're having today?
Well, of course. I'm having a little bit of tea myself. I'm drinking some nettle leaf today. And I am from Minnesota. I'm signing in from Minnesota, and we actually just had all of our snow melt. So we're feeling the spring. We're getting the spring rain right now.
It was melting like a couple weeks ago, and it was like, oh my gosh, it increased by 50 degrees. Like it's all gonna be gone. And then all of a sudden, my friend who's working on being a pilot was like, oh no, it's supposed to snow a foot. And I'm like, what? What? It's almost April. The snow should be like going away right now.
Let's be done with this now. Let's be done with this. Yeah.
Yeah.
We always get that spring teaser, though, here in Minnesota. I don't know about you in Alaska, but we get that little teaser of warm, fresh weather, and then we get dumped on.
Yeah, I feel like that's what we're going through right now. Hopefully this is going to end very soon. Hopefully this is the last bit of it because I am ready to get out, to bike, be active, go camping, go fishing, all that stuff. And are you by the Great Lakes? You're in Michigan. Or, what kind of things do you do there?
No, we are actually in Minnesota. So
Minnesota.
Yes. So we're a couple hours south of Lake Superior. So that is an easy, wonderful drive, and we get to go enjoy the Great Lakes every now and again.
Nice. Well, I am drinking some Earl Grey, and I had just made a video on Earl Grey martinis for making cocktails. So that's why I'm enjoying some Earl Grey because I just wanted some tea. I didn't need any more cocktails.
Is that a martini? I'm not sure now, Jenny.
Behind me, there's a martini. I only drank half of it, and I was like, "Oh no, I gotta record another podcast. It's time to just
dial it back just a little bit.
Straight up Earl Grey. Yeah, exactly. We've got
Lisa straight up nettle.
Yeah. Let's say hello to some of our guests. We have Lisa watching from Virginia. We have Teddy. Teddy, I think Teddy, you're from Missouri. Oh, she's having a martini. Oh, that's funny.
Oh, I'm jealous.
So, hello and welcome all of our guests who are watching from all different platforms of YouTube and Facebook, and we're so glad that you're joining us here today live. She's from Springfield, Missouri. Awesome.
Excellent.
Thank you. So, Nicole, when I had reached out to you, you're telling me a little bit about your story and your background. So, do you mind sharing with our listeners how you got into tea? I mean, you're drinking nettle right now, so that's an herbal infusion. And so, how did you get into teas? What's your personal story about tea?
Many years ago, I was dealing with some health issues, and at that time, I had a toddler and a brand new baby. And I was being told over and over again, you probably have postpartum depression. I thought, I understand that depression can cause you pain. I understand depression can cause fatigue. I know about these things, but that's not really how I'm feeling. And I wasn't really quite sure. I kind of felt like I wasn't being heard. I did find a doctor who was like, there is something there is a test I'm going to run on you, and I'm going to go ahead and do this, and we're going to learn a lot about you today. And I thought, finally, somebody gets it. Diagnosis finally comes. We have fibromyalgia and we have chronic fatigue. That made way more sense to me than something like postpartum. And after that, then came a litany of prescriptions. Now, don't get me wrong, I do think that every kind of medicine has a place. But at that time, fibromyalgia wasn't very well known, I don't think, in the medical community. There wasn't a lot that anybody really knew about. And prescriptions just weren't going to work for me. I felt worse on the medication and I felt like my body was less manageable on the medication than it was just kind of being in pain and tired all the time. But that's also not how you want to live.
Yeah.
So I started kind of really thinking about, okay, you put in what you get out what you put in kind of a thing. And I started getting a little more curious about movement and nutrition. And so I studied with the Arthritis Foundation and I wrote a program for exercise with fibromyalgia. That was the one thing doctors kept telling me to do. Eat really good and exercise. And exercise is kind of the one thing you don't want to do when you're already in pain and you already feel like you ran a marathon. So I thought, okay, I'm going to have to really get creative about my health. And I got very interested in nutrition. And I thought, what's the most whole food that we could really enjoy on a day-to-day basis, that has the biggest variety across the board, and that is drinking tea. And so,
That's
kind of long story short, that's how I ended up in tea.
awesome. Well, so okay, some people might not know what fibromyalgia is. Maybe they've only seen TV commercials. And
Mm.
sometimes people don't know that's what they have. Like for you, you're like, "Well, I feel like this." Like how does that relate to fibromyalgia? Like, do you mind explaining a little bit about what that is? Just in case there's people who just don't know or might have a friend might kind of sound like what you're going through and have no idea and you're like, "Hey, I just saw this, heard this podcast episode, maybe that's what you have." Do you mind explaining?
Well, absolutely, and thank you for asking. It's an interesting kind. I don't want to really call it a disease. It's a syndrome. It's an interesting syndrome to live with. Today, I might be able to manage a full day of regular daily activities and be perfectly fine. Tomorrow, I can't match my day. I've kind of described it like certain, you know what a bruise feels like. Unfortunately, we all know what a bruise feels like. Anything from falling off your bike when you were a kid to hitting the hitch on the back of a vehicle. We know what a bruise feels like.
Oh, I've done that too. That's a long, big bruise on a
That's a
hitch
big
on the back
one.
of a vehicle.
And sometimes even your face feels like it has a bruise. Your neck may feel like it has a bruise. Your legs, different parts of the body. It's a pain. It's literally a pain. And it's kind of difficult to describe an illness that you're living with that maybe others can't see. And you, like I said, it's difficult when you can't match from day to day.
Yeah. So was it kind of like chronic pain? Like you didn't have a physical bruise, did you? You just
No.
felt like it was achy. Like
To
you
the
had the
touch,
flu?
that's what it feels like. And I think honestly, there's so many variants to this syndrome that I think no two people with the same diagnosis are the same. And so it's just really important, in my opinion, to be your own self advocate. Maybe write down if you're feeling off, do body scans throughout the day. Okay, right now I'm really holding tension in my jaw. I really am feeling stressed in my shoulders. Do a body scan throughout the day. Really do be really self-aware about how you're feeling and then start to think about maybe why I'm feeling this way today. Why am I experiencing these physical symptoms? And then on the other end of that, what can I do to relieve some of this for myself? Whether you have a diagnosis or not, nobody wants to live and struggle throughout your day. You always are looking for ways to have better energy, feel great, right? And arthritis specifically happens to be an inflammatory disease, which is what I've learned throughout my many studies since I've received this diagnosis 20 years ago. And that
So
is
how does
another,
so how does that relate? How does arthritis, like I always think of arthritis as like joint pain. So how
sure.
does that relate?
Essentially, when you are dealing with inflammation in the body, we kind of, it can always lead back to essentially our gut health and how are our cells being fed. And I'll just never forget it. When I was told you get out what you put in, same thing. You don't put sugar in a gas tank, right? I'm not saying have a
No.
sugar-free life, but I mean, martinis are a thing. But um, you will get in what you get out. And in arthritis is typically, yes, it is joint pain and it's joint related and it's rheumatology for the most part, but our body still views it as inflammation, if that makes
Uh,
sense.
yeah. Hmm.
And
So
so
how
the
does that
best,
so how does that so inflammation, whether it's arthritis, I'm hearing you that you're saying that it's inflammation. Inflammation overall. And then the fibromyalgia could be anywhere. It could be on a non-joint or a joint. And so you became more involved with the arthritis community because of your fibromyalgia, right?
yes, yep,
And then while you're
absolutely.
learning about it with like nutrition and movement, I just want to know now, like because it makes sense because arthritis, like you don't want to move, you're in pain.
It's difficult. And so, I guess one tip I can give if you are someone who deals with joint pain or you know you're dealing with inflammation, the one tip that has always stuck with me is the Arthritis Foundation says when you're doing stretches, hold those stretches at only 8 seconds and then move on to the next thing. And so, there's just different ways to modify everything to really make you feel like you are living at your fullest. And for me, it it might sound silly, but tea really does that. Again, we're thinking about how are we going to feed ourselves really great, wholesome foods? What's an easier way to do it?
Yeah. So okay, so what kind of teas did you start getting into? Like were you a tea drinker before then? Or were you like for me, I've been a coffee drinker the majority of my life. And most people because I've had my tea business for 14 years and I'm so knowledgeable about tea and I'm Chinese, they just assume that I've been drinking tea my whole life because it's culturally normal. But
Sure.
I actually grew up in Alaska drinking coffee since I was 4. And I didn't get into tea until much later when I was in athletic training and sports medicine, and not because of the health benefits, because it was just cheap. It was inexpensive, and then I started to up level and understand the different quality and how it works physiologically in your body. So for you, were you always a tea drinker?
No. I'm right there with you, Jenny. Coffee, I started my working life as a teenager in a coffee shop. I still enjoy a decent cup of coffee. Um, no, I've always been coffee. And it took me quite a few years, actually, probably the first decade of kind of living with this, learning about, okay, how can I really find the best life, even though and I've really only been blending tea and working with tea for wellness for about 5 years, um, out of the last 20. So it really started organically, with the study of nutrition and what are really the best foods from this body for me to live my fullest. What's the best thing that I could be putting in to get out exactly what I'm looking for? And it just really genuinely came down to this is the easiest thing I can do. Steep a few leaves and drink it. I'm somebody who constantly has a beverage. I'm coffee in the morning, water all day. Now, for the last few years, I kind of treat my tea like a prescription. How am I feeling today? All right, I'm drinking nettle because I need to just flush out some probably really bad foods from the weekend
That
and
martini.
and that martini or two and restore a little bit of the gut health that I kind of created this environment. And so now I'm looking to kind of refresh and renew. And what an easier way to do it. So
So
that's
what
kind of how I got into tea is studying nutrition and realizing there really isn't much more of a wholer food than the leaf of the plant.
so what do you think about like consuming tea as a broth, essentially, right? Or
Hmm.
herbal teas. They're like in water, they're extracted. It's more like a broth, kind of like a soup base. And because people don't usually eat their leaves or their nettles or whatever it is.
Right.
But versus like food, because you were in nutrition too, like making a plan. So you approached food as something so attainable as something like a tea. But what do you say to people who, you know, they're like, okay, tea's gonna solve all of my problems? Like, what do you say to that? Because I have some people who are like, I think that's what's gonna solve all my problems. You just need to tell me all the teas that I need to consume. And from my medical background, I'm like, no, you can't just do that.
Exactly. And that's not necessarily the case. Tea will not solve all your problems, just like just eating a healthy, balanced diet. I have seen people, I have coached people who are at a goal weight, who have very little body fat and have high blood pressure. And it's the trifecta. It's a lifestyle. We all need to be able to say that we move well, right? We have good, fun activity in our life. We have our social aspect, which I think tea also brings another element of that in, whole other podcast. But I mean, it's not just based on what you're putting in. It's also a little bit of what you do with your life, that has that added element to having that optimum health.
Yeah. So, what do you say about movement for people who are in a lot of pain? Like you said, stretch for 8 seconds. 8 seconds isn't very long. Like in athletic
Mm-mm.
training and sports medicine, we're always holding every athlete stretch for 30 seconds or longer.
Right?
Like different techniques of whether it's contraction, while they're contracting and we're stretching them at the same time, or if they're relaxed and we're stretching them, especially for injury prevention. But you're saying like baby steps. But some people they just want a quick fix, like just drink tea and that's going to make me feel better. It sounds like there's a big part of movements. And how does that relate to gut? How does it all relate?
Oh, absolutely. The studies show that people who exercise have better gut health. And
Hmm.
so there is a movement aspect to our lives. Our bodies were built to move, our bodies were meant to keep our joints lubricated. And I understand what you're saying about injury prevention. And I'm a firm believer that we just have to meet our body kind of where we're at. Pain can also be a warning, right?
Hmm.
I think you and
Yeah.
I both very much know that pain can be a warning. And so you don't ever want to push too far. Obviously, talk with a doctor before you start any new nutritional or physical routine. But movement has a place in. So when we're talking about eating whole foods, drinking a broth, whatever that is, we need our gut's job is to feed our blood, right? We need to feed our cells. And we're deciding every time we put something in our mouth or make a move, what our cells will be receiving. And so as we move and literally get our blood pumping, that plays a huge part in gut health just as well. I don't know, what do you say? I think it's equally as important as what
Yeah.
we are eating.
Well, like for example, like when we're ingesting something, whether it's just water or whether it's a tea, nettle tea, whatever it is, our guts is this factory. It's kind of like the post office, and it's sorting all these things and distributing it. But if you're not increasing circulation, then if you're not increasing circulation, how's it going to get to all the places it needs to go? Like, it might just kind of like stop and be like, well, I guess I'm going to only go halfway to the mailbox. Like, because there wasn't a way, a mechanism to push to push the contraction, like, because I'm always thinking of all the different systems in the body and how it's all like your whole body is pumping all the time. But if you're laying still, it has a harder time of pumping because using all like the muscles in your arm are squishing all those different, systems, lymphatic system, circulatory system, oxygen. Like, if you're not moving, it's like going the mailbox halfway. You're like, yeah, I'm good here.
Well said. Well said. And that's why I think too, studies show your digestion is better for people who are moving at least 3 times a week in a focused movement pattern, right? Which we can all
Yeah.
say is if we're exercising 3 times a week, there's going to be a lot of things about our bodies that are better. Again, meet your body where you're at.
Mhm.
Know your warning signs and have conversations with your doctor.
So, do you have any suggestions of what people should drink? I know you're drinking nettle. Do you have any other suggestions of some other things, infusions that would be good for people? I mean, we're not saying just drink stuff. We're saying,
Right.
move also, whether it's walking, sitting up, doing, like, we have our injured patients at the physical therapy clinic, and all they can do is like move their toes, point your toes. Like, if that's all you can do, that's all you're gonna do because you have an
Right.
injury. But
Right.
but what are some things that you suggest also, and what they do?
Well, for me personally, I guess peppermint has always been a favorite for me just because for some reason, whatever it is in the peppermint leaf is really, really great for digestion. And digestion starts in the mouth, technically, but peppermint tea, it's really great to the taste. And it really coats the stomach well and it sets up the digestive system for really great movement, digestion. Um, when it comes to battling both your digestive tract as well as inflammation, I prefer a ginger base. Ginger is the queen, and as far as I'm concerned, just like basil leaf, actually, basil is a really, really great queen of the herbs. Um, and if we're going to, kind of like you said, a lot of us are really looking for that quick fix. If you're going to drink something for the purpose of wellness, if you can find yourself a nice ginger base with a little bit of that Tulsi tea, that basil leaf tea, you have you're starting somewhere very, very nicely. Add a little bit of peppermint and you're pretty good. That's a pretty decent blend. Um, our March box has Tulsi tea, nettle, um, and a white tea for a base. And in my opinion, those 3 teas together, you really you are battling inflammation, you're working well with your digestion, and it's just a really great tea for renewal overall.
Nice. So, I'm curious to know, because we started off on how you got into tea.
Yeah.
So, let's bring this full circle. Now that you've already helped people with in the arthritis side of things and with movement and nutrition plans, where are you now? Like, how are your symptoms of fibromyalgia? What do you do now? You mentioned a box. Like, how, bring us full circle to your through your journey.
Well, now what we do is we actually have a subscription box, and each month you receive a base tea, which is going to be an oolong, um, a black tea, or a green tea. Just a good solid base tea. And then we have 2 blender teas that you can blend with it. And so the variety of flavors and the variety of wellness is really endless. We do have an herbalist on staff who shout out to Emily, she's amazing, who creates recipes that we gift you with this box. Um, Me personally, right now, I am medication free,
Nice.
which is huge, even though I do have to say the medical world with this diagnosis has come leaps and bounds. But I'm medication free. Um, I do treat tea like a prescription. Not the only thing I do, just a small thing there, but I do treat it like a prescription. I do that body scan that I mentioned. I can kind of tune in and see really what I do need for the day. And I create that and I drink 3 to 5 cups a day. And it really keeps me in a place of, um, if you are a fibro person out there, you know that we don't deal with this constantly. We have flare ups. Flare ups
Mm.
have decreased. Um, they say the disease does not progress, but I do feel like as time goes on and our inflammation in our body just kind of naturally increases as we get older, I think we struggle recovering from those flare ups like we used to when we were 20. So I have been able to have a shorter recovery time medication free. Again, I do treat my tea and food as though it's a prescription for wellness.
And so I'm guessing part of your prescription is movement too, to help that.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, as we are progressing with our tea offerings, movement is going to be a part of an upgrade that we have launching real soon. So it's
Oh,
pretty exciting.
awesome. Well,
Yeah.
Nicole, so what do you do exactly right now? So you mentioned the box, you mentioned an herbalist on staff. Could you explain to listeners like this box, or if you do more than that, what do you do exactly and how can people find out more about you?
Well, you can certainly go to our website, which is ucraftea.com, and it's CRAFTEA, um, because you literally craft your own tea when you're working with us. And I think being able to have fun in the kitchen, just like making an Earl Grey martini, yes, please. Because being your own self advocate for your wellness and having really being hands on and creating that, I think is very exciting. So we offer right now a subscription box that's called Spill the Tea. And that box, like I said, is our base tea each month with 2 blenders. Now, those blenders might be flowers, it might be another traditional tea. Um, then launching soon, we are actually having a blending for better box. So it's just kind of an upgrade from the spill the tea. Like I said, Emily, our herbalist, creates wonderful recipe suggestions for you to enjoy with your spill the tea box. Um, but, and this is kind of a secret, but I'm going to spill the tea, no pun intended. Our blending for better box comes with an actual journal. It's so amazing. Um, you get journal prompts each month. We give out breathing exercises, movement suggestions, and it's really a lot more wellness based than just the spill the tea box. And so this is going to be available for Mother's Day, and we are doing the launch links and all of that information next week. So it's
Nice.
really, really focused on wellness. There's some coaching capabilities there to work one on one with someone if you have a really specific issue that you are really looking to get some help on and you want to work with it with tea. So, pretty exciting things happening.
Oh wow, that sounds great and it sounds so timely. I feel like I mean there's got to be men, right, who suffer from fibromyalgia too,
Absolutely.
but I feel
Absolutely.
like the support out there is, maybe women are so used to supporting each other and being advocates for each other, but there's the majority of like hardcore tea drinkers and in the tea industry, as you know, are men. So this,
Yeah,
even though this is so timely for Mother's Day, this is a gift that could work for all kinds of people who need this help. Because why wouldn't you tell your friend who every day looks like they're just a little under the weather or a little uncomfortable and they can't find out what's wrong with them, or they're like, "Oh, well, this is just how it is." No, it is not just how it is. You found help. And I mean, yes, pharmaceutical drugs have a place, right? Like, I would never say don't take your medications. I mean,
right.
they are there to take care of whatever that issue is, like, immediately. But then it's letting your body slowly repair and recover, and you supplement it with these other things, these routines, these movements, these teas, your nutrition, your diet, that is going to maintain that. And granted, stress happens, right? So there could be something traumatic that happens, or a stressor in your life that can cause a flare up just like that, because our
Absolutely.
environment is so, what do you call it, like, people sometimes don't realize the environment that they're in is actually what's making their body revolt. And
And that again is called a body scan. Why am I feeling this way right now?
exactly. And so we have this culture of us learning how to be mindful, but some people think mindfulness is like sitting there and like in a yoga pose in silence. But
For
they're
30
not being
minutes.
yeah, but they're not being proactive in like analyzing and thinking and processing of why they feel what they feel. And that's the next step, right? You,
So well said, Jenny. And actually, I would actually go, I would say about 85% of my emails that I receive throughout any given week is from men wondering, okay, well, I'm not really sure how to blend and I'm not sure if I want to actually spend time blending. Will you teach me? And
mhm.
absolutely, yes, we will.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're
And
totally
so
right.
I feel like, like I said, well, while I've traveled to all different tea farms around the world, they always look at me weird because I'm a woman. I started my company when I was 25 years old. And first of all, I'm a 25-year-old trying to start a tea company in a man's industry, and I'm young. And they're like, "Wait, how old are you?" I'm like, "25." Like, "Why do you want to get into tea? It's an old person's industry." I'm like, "Because I
Well,
like tea." So, but yeah, this is not exclusive just to women, just to mothers. This is anyone can drink a nice infused beverage. And it's all about what you proactively do for yourself. There's no shame in saying, there's got to be a better way, and I'm
right,
going to figure it out. Yeah.
right. And yeah, I mean, I was 22 and I was like, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. And
Yeah.
brand new babies, I'm not living like this. And that's really all it takes. You get to your point of, I need to sleep better. I'm sick of feeling like this, whatever it is. And we all know when that moment is. And it
Yeah,
doesn't
for
matter, male, female, young, old. We've all had it. We all know when we've had it. And it doesn't have to take a lifetime to get well. It just doesn't.
well, then you've missed out on a lifetime of opportunity if you've waited for a lifetime to get well. So,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
well, so enlightening. So, thank you so much, Nicole, for coming on here. I'm going to put up this link on the video. It'll be in the bio on how you can find out more about what Nicole does and her box and her blender box to help people heal from pain, inflammation, and it starts with being proactive and making a decision to make a change in your life. So, if you know anyone, because maybe you're not going through this journey, but you know someone who might be going through this journey alone, could you please share this out with them? Just let them know as a resource, because that's what we are passionate about our companies, because that's what we love to do, is help transform people's lives through health, through wellness, through awareness, and through this community of tea drinkers. So Thank you so much, Nicole, for joining us. Look at the link that we've provided you, and we sure hope you check her out and start making some proactive decisions in your life. Thank you, Nicole.
Thank you, Jenny.